Would like to introduce our next panel. And my next panelist is going to be Neil Cause, who's CEO of Geotab. And with him will also be Brandon Nixon, CEO of Lytix, and then also Tom Mitchell with AccuSoft. So with that, a round of applause for our three panelists, and they'll be joining us momentarily. There you go.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
Mike. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. So we're going to touch upon a number of different topics in this discussion. So I'd like to get right into it. This is really an exciting time in the area of fleet management. There are a lot of new developments that we see developing now that are on the horizon that's going to have a dramatic impact on how we manage our fleets. A couple of areas in particular is the area of machine learning and the area of AI, artificial intelligence and telematics. And with that, I'd like to start the conversation with Neil. And how would you define and envision the impact that those two topics or two areas are going to have on fleet management in the coming years?
Yeah, Mike. Look, certainly AI is being brandied around a lot. There's a lot of hype around what AI is and what AI isn't. And I'll be honest with you, AI is pretty hard. We had a couple of abortive attempts at trying to make AI work well. We thought that we could use it to categorize vehicle uses, and we came up with some ideas. And we spent 3 years refining that to the point where we're now getting some amazing results out of using AI. I mentioned some of them in my keynote, talking about battery failure detection, being able to classify vocations for vehicles, so being able to automatically figure out what you use the vehicle for, being able to detect whether you've actually had an accident by whether the vehicle got towed and the accelerometer events. And while these sound kind of pretty detailed, the benefit is that we're now able to integrate those into the Geotab products. So I think in general, not just from Geotab, but from other telematics companies, you're going to start seeing some valuable features getting added and integrated into the respective products that are pretty much game-changing. Being able to tell people how to benchmark, being able to tell them how to drive more safely. And so there is no doubt that AI is going to have a big impact on telematics.
Well, what's your take on this, Brandon?
So we've been in AI for about 10 years now, and we've been using it on the data side. Where it really impacts our business in video telematics is really the combination of machine vision and machine learning put together. Machine vision algorithms have been around for a lot of years, but it's really when they combined them on their ability to learn that it really started to take off. I mentioned some of the things this morning where if you combine the machine vision and the machine learning in two different ways, one's called a convolutional neural net, and the other one's called a recurrent neural net. And those are both just AI, forms of AI. One of them is able to see objects in the frames of the video, and the other one is able to see movement between frames of the video. And if you think about being able to detect a cell phone, a driver with a cell phone, well, if you see a phone, that's pretty straightforward with the convolutional neural nets, where we've added the recurrent neural nets, and now you don't even have to see the phone in the frame, you just see the head moving, or you see some distraction and you know that the driver's distracted. So it's really that combination of machine vision and machine learning that's really having an impact.
Okay, excellent. I deal with a lot of fleet managers throughout the industry, and many of whom do not have telematics solutions at the moment. And one of the hesitancies that they have is making the right decision, or the fear of making the wrong decision. One of the fundamental questions that they look at is whether they should adopt a single application for their telematics solution or use multiple applications that are integrated together. And to help us sort through that, I'd like to address that question to you, Tom, and what kind of advice would you give to these fleet managers?
Well, sure, Mike. I think from our standpoint, we tried to be that single application for a long time and thought that was the best way to go, yet now, once we've come across best in breed, like Geotab's application, it just makes more sense for us to let Geotab take care of the fleet part, and then we'll take care of the part where the people are actually using their hands, using their cell phones to do work. You know, we like to say that, that drivers do more than just drive. They have another job that's outside the vehicle. And, you know, so to be able to go find applications that work together, where you can have the very best of what, quite frankly, each of us on the stage do. I mean, we don't try to do video. You know, I want that from Brandon. You know, I want to be able to go integrate that in with what we do, and quite frankly, that's what this has been all about, is the Geotab marketplace.
And what advice would you give to these fleet managers, Brandon? Is it something similar, or?
It's very similar, yeah. I believe companies can't be great at everything. And it's finding what you're really, really good at and continuing to invest in that. It both delivers value to the clients and keeps you ahead of the competition. If you get spread too broad and you try to take on too many things, your innovation and your ability to add value back to the client is really limited. And so it's that ability to focus and then partner up with great companies like you see up here.
Right. Yeah, part and parcel with this whole change of dramatic new technologies coming in play. One is the whole transition to 5G. And I'd like to ask a question of Neil, what kind of impact is that going to have on fleet managers in terms of this transition to 5G on telematics?
So Mike, 5G for us is broken down into two distinct technologies or pieces. The one element of 5G that is kind of marketed by Verizon and T-Mo and AT&T really focuses around the high capacity, high data throughput, low latency capability around 5G. But there's another hidden side to 5G that's less talked about, that's much more applicable to IoT, and that is long range, low power, inexpensive IoT that 5G introduces. And between 5G and NB-IoT, there are going to be a bunch of new products that you will see coming to market, you know, over the next couple of years from everybody that take advantage of the new modules and modems that are available that are really interesting. I mean, our product costs, you know, as everybody knows, $50, you know, in terms of the bill of material. We reckon it's going to be able to drop to $35, just simply because most of the fees that we pay are licensing fees for the chipsets, and CAD M1 reduces the cost of the licensing down significantly. But it's also low power, so you're going to be able to do some amazing new things, like stick a sensor up on the wall that lasts for 5 years, that, you know, every time you open the door or whatever, it triggers. Or in a vehicle, you won't have to wire sensors in because you'll be able to take advantage of these low power networks. So from that perspective, you know, we find it really exciting, and 5G is going to have a big impact.
So Tom, I'd like to build upon that first question I posed to you. So again, you have the fleet operator. They're looking to invest in technology. They're looking to improve productivity within their organization, and they're looking to save money all at the same time. What advice would you give them, and what's the best way to do it, and what's the best way to get the best return?
Well, I think the best way to do it is by using a combination of the products that we have up here today. You know, one of the biggest expenses that every company has, especially for us, is people. I need my people to be more productive. I need them to be able to gather information easier. I need them to be able to report that information back to me immediately. Changing all the dynamics of what each of the companies do with their employees, making them responsible for more, takes more pressure off the back office, because now I've got that happening in the front of the line. And ultimately, it saves a ton of money. I mean, you know, it's funny, I don't really see an ROI as being as big a deal, because the ROI we provide now is off the charts. I mean, when I tell people that the ROI that we see with our customers is in the first 3 or 4 days of every month, they go, "What are you talking about?" Look, if I can help you do one more job a day, I can not only pay for our service, their service, the cell service, I can pay for the whole deal. it's almost like getting productivity for free.
What advice would you give, Neil, along the same line?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always try and think about is technology is quite complicated and intimidating to many people. You know, we eat, sleep, live, breathe technology, all of us, probably in this room. And to the average fleet manager, they find it particularly challenging. It's a daunting task when I need to implement a new system like this. So what we try and do is recommend that people start with something really, really simple and basic. And you know, maybe it's just use the product to manage idling, for example, our product. And then graduate up and start looking at managing engine light on. Look at fuel then as the next step. Maybe look at productivity, look at stops at customers. And then we recommend, and this is the beauty of the marketplace, is that you then take the very next step as soon as you're comfortable to go, well, what else can I do? Now that I understand the benefit that technology is going to bring to my fleet, when I invest in technology, I get a return, and it's amazing, and it's not so intimidating, and it's not so hard, because all our respective companies work very, very hard to make it easy. Now I can go to the marketplace and go, now I want to try a camera solution, now I want to try a form solution, and so that gradual improvement so that they're not intimidated and scared away. If they saw it all at once, they'd run away, but when they can gradually build it up, it gets better.
Yeah, with my next question, I'd like to address that to all three of you, and if each of you could take turns sequentially going through it. But you know, one of the key things in a successful telematics solution is partnering, and why is partnering so critical? How would you explain that to a first-time or prospective customer? Starting with you, Tom, then Neil, and Brandon.
Well, I think it's exactly what we just said. You know, partnering is, I get the very best of each possible thing that we do. I get the best fleet management. I get the best video. I get the best fleet or people management that I can get, and I can try one piece at a time. It's so important for people to understand that you can't just buy any product because they may or may not integrate with another product. So having the ecosystems that all of us have up here makes all the difference in the world, and it takes the pressure off of the customer to make, oh my God, I got to make this decision. We're going to end up spending, you know, I don't know, whatever, $100 a month, you know, for every single driver. I know when I got to go make that decision, it's not an easy decision to make. I want to be darn sure I'm going to get the most out of my investment that I possibly can. But by partnering, now he can start with fleet. He can add on Brandon's video. He can add on our stuff one at a time. I don't have to do it all at once. It's just as Neil was saying earlier, I don't have to get overwhelmed with the huge bite.
And Neil?
Yeah, I mean, who really wants to go back to the days of owning a mainframe and paying IBM, you know, millions and millions of dollars? I think when you look out there and you look at the amazing new products that are being brought to market, like Workday and the HRIS systems that you can see, and you know, video telematics products and forms products, and amazing new innovative ways of, you know, bringing improvement to your business, you don't want to be strapped down in a way that goes, no, that doesn't work with what you got. So many of the market-leading products realize the importance of being open, the importance of being able to integrate, and the importance of having respective marketplaces so that you can pick and choose from an ensemble of all these different pieces and put it together in a way that's best for your organization. And so, you know, I think there's very, very little doubt that that is the model that the world is progressing to. It's the model that works, and it's the model that we're going to see over the next decade.
Brandon.
Yeah, the one commonality between the three of us in our businesses is that we're all very focused on delivering ROI back to our clients. And there's piles of money sitting in on every board table in every company around the world, and it's really reaching into those piles and pulling it back. We don't do technology for technology's sake. When Neil talked about 5G, I agree with everything he said. It has enormous potential for us as providers and for you as fleets. But it's also a little bit scary in that 5G is not homogeneous. 5G has an element that's down at the same frequency bands that your cell phone is at, And then they've got frequency bands that are up 25 to 50 gigahertz, and that's where you get a lot of the low latency, and that's where you get a lot of the high bandwidth. The problem with the high frequencies is they don't penetrate walls very well, and they're not perfect for mobility. So if you just jump into technology for technology's sake, you could get burned. And one of the things that the commonality of having the best of breed up here is that we're all very focused on making sure that we're making the technology investments that you can leverage to really deliver ROI to your companies.
Okay, excellent. One of the other areas of discussion here at the conference has been electric vehicles, and they've been around in the modern era, the past 30 years. But what's really caught a lot of people's attention is when they look at the OEM's future product plans, all of them are introducing EVs. Many are going so far as to say that they're going to have an EV counterpart to their conventional fueled vehicles either as a form of a dedicated battery-powered vehicle or a hybrid. So with that said, what do you feel is the practicality of EVs in terms of fleet applications, and why would that excel over a conventional internal combustion engine? And with that, I'd like to pose that question to you, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, I drive a Tesla myself, and certainly believe in the green revolution, but also I'm a practical businessman, and you have to combine the two elements together. You have to say, well, look, at the end of the day, the green revolution is not going to happen, and it's not going to be cheaper to run my fleet using electric power if we don't take the bold step of producing electric vehicles, getting the manufacturing costs down so that we kind of raise the adoption. We're never going to get there unless we take that big jump. But we've got a business to run, we've got profits to make. At the end of the day, electric vehicles have some hidden benefits. Right? One of the most interesting hidden benefits, having owned Tesla for 10 years, is really the maintenance element. The vehicle never needs maintenance, truly. You replace the tires, and the brake pads don't even need to be maintained because the engine is using power to slow itself down, so it regenerates the power. Certainly there are going to be electric vehicles everywhere. It's going to replace the internal combustion engine. The question is really around timing. And you don't want to be the pioneer with the arrows in your back. You've got to make sure that you pick and choose the right vehicles in your organization, that you can change to electric vehicles today. You got to think about things like battery degradation and what's the resale value of that vehicle when I do need to sell it, and is it going to be practical? If it's going to take me 6-7 hours to recharge the batteries, is it going to work? I mean, there's lots of hidden problems that we need to see. Getting the amount of power that you need, for example, UPS or Pepsi would need to a particular depot in order to charge all of the vehicles, if they were all changed to electric vehicles, would put huge demands on the utility that would not be able to be met today. It simply cannot be met. If tomorrow we had to all change to electric vehicles, we couldn't do so. That will change over time, and it will be built up for sure, but that costs billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars to change that infrastructure. So I mean, I'm very optimistic that we'll take some baby steps to move towards EVs, but I think it's going to, it's like anything where we have huge enthusiasm in the beginning, maybe too much enthusiasm, but in the long run, it's fundamentally game-changing, like many technologies.
And from Lytic's perspective, Brandon, what's your take?
Yeah, we agree with what Neil just said. I mean, obviously we all support the green revolution, but it's back to this concept of technology for technology's sake versus delivering ROI. What's pretty interesting is electric vehicles many times get used in the same sense as autonomous vehicles. And they feel like those two things are coming out at the same time, and then it's going to revolutionize fleets. I can tell you from Lytic's standpoint, I talked a little bit this morning about the number of miles and the number of objects that we get from machine vision. We get 100 collisions a day. We get 1,000 near collisions a day. Despite all of our efforts to prevent collisions from occurring, the complexity on our roadways that has to be automated for an autonomous vehicle to go point to point is an extremely, extremely hard problem. Just think about it this way. So back in a year, we had the ability, technology-wise, to take an airplane, an airliner, to go from the East Coast across the Atlantic and land it in Europe without a person touching a single control on the airplane. That year was 1947. And yet today we still have 2 pilots and we still have airplanes that are crashing. I mean, that is technology, and that's the difficulty. And so when you talk about EV, which I agree, it's going to be very much an evolution. It makes a ton of sense. The autonomous vehicle is going to be a little bit more fit and start, and that one is the one to be really careful about in how far you get out in terms of investing. What is going to happen, which is really interesting, is those technologies that there's so much investment going into autonomous technologies right now, that it will change the experience that your companies have and your drivers have and your technicians have. It will change the technologies, and you can do a variety of things as long as they're smart about it.
Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of unknown and unattended consequences. I had an opportunity to drive in an autonomous vehicle, and we stopped for a pedestrian, and that pedestrian did this, and the machine froze. It does not recognize hand gestures. And I think that's really critical in order for autonomous vehicles to be successful on the roads in the future. But talking about the future, what do you think is going to be the next wave of, now that we've got all 3 of you here, what is the next wave of impactful technology that's going to be benefiting fleets out there? What do you see as the next big thing coming down the pike? And again, I'd like to address that to all 3 of you. I started last time with Tom, but this time with you, Brandon, and we'll work in the opposite direction.
Sure. The big thing for us in our business is the machine vision. And the way that neural nets work is they're basically algorithms that haven't been programmed yet. And so you've got this structure, and you can teach that algorithm to literally do anything. As long as you have the data, you can take these neural nets and you plug in a whole bunch of videos or a whole bunch of data into one side, which is called the training set. Then you have another side, which is called the test set. And as long as you have a feedback loop where you're plugging in videos of, say, I want to identify deer on the roadway on open highways. That's what I want to be able to see. And when I see it, I want to alert all the vehicles that are within a 10-mile radius that there's wildlife on this roadway. That's pretty powerful for people to prevent collisions from occurring. We can do that. And we can literally train these cameras that are going to be in all the vehicles, train them to see whatever we want. Many of the things will be very vertically oriented, so being able to see, overflowing waste bins, or being able to see when an electrician technician is not wearing a hard hat or not buckled into their electricity bucket. Those kinds of things. But many of them will be across the spectrum of fleets of just being able to make the environment safer and being able to make the drivers better at what they do.
Mm-hmm. And Neil?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with Brandon 100%. I think the problem with video today, or in the past at least, is that video needs to be looked at by a human and interpreted. By being able to take a video stream and use machine learning to extract, as we talked earlier about today, to extract the information out of the data, to be able to identify circumstances that are occurring. And some examples: litter on the side of the street, count the number of pedestrians on the road, see if there are cracks in the road, enables that data to then become information, and that information can then be pushed up into your big data systems, and machine learning can then be applied to this information. And that is very, very powerful. And I think that's the revolution that we're going to see. We're going to see video is going to be a key part to the revolution that's going to happen over the next 10 years with regards to information. Taking that data and analyzing it is what we talked about at the conference today with Geotab, and the amazing insights, predicting accidents and battery failure and all the other good stuff. But if you have a richer source of that information, it just makes it even more powerful. So I would say that's really where the innovation is going to come.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see the innovation coming from, Tom?
Well, I agree. It is kind of the big data play, and for us, I think we see more of that big data being involved in that data that our customers are collecting, that are outside of the normal what's the vehicle doing? What's the video doing? I need to know what my guy's doing. And so we'll see a lot more of that as we come up.
Let's look at it from the perspective of your customers, in particular fleet operators. What can fleet operators do to prepare themselves to adopt and competitively leverage what's coming next, some of these items that you've discussed here? Any advice that you could provide to them? Maybe starting with you, Brandon.
Again, as you can tell, I'm a big proponent of not technology for technology's sake and really focusing on what the ROI is. The technologies that we have available to us, both now as well as the next 5 to 10 years, are truly astounding. And we can do a variety of things for you, our clients, as long as they can be articulated, and if you hand us a problem, we can help solve it between the three of us up here and the best of breed partners. We can solve a lot of problems. One of the really interesting trends that is going on in the technology world right now is called edge computing. And it's related a little bit to 5G because it's pushing the technology bandwidth, the ability to process things closer and closer to the user. And so for our vehicles, and we've started leveraging this, we have processing that occurs both what's called on the edge or in the vehicle, as well as in the cloud. And it's the combination of those that are enormously powerful. What it means to you is it future-proofs the investments you make in the technology that you put in the cab. As long as it's connected back to the cloud and you have distributed architecture where some of the processing can be done inside the vehicle and some of the processing can be done in the cloud for latency tolerant applications, that allows you to invest with confidence that this will carry you for the next 5 to 10 to 15 years.
What about you, Neil? What advice would you give the customers?
Yeah, so we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and this is going to sound a little bit strange, but is there even going to be a fleet management role in 10 years' time? And let me just explain what I mean. The world, what we're seeing in this world today is when you start a business, you want to be focused on what you're good at. And you want to take all of the things that are non-core in your business and you want to outsource them. You want to find best-of-breed companies that are going to run your manufacturing, that are going to run your distribution, that are going to run your fleet. And so let's just ask ourselves this question in the future is, while we have lots of fleet managers today, and we talk about technology being extensively used by fleet managers, is there an opportunity for some of that to be outsourced to world-class companies that can have the best of breed technology and fleet management and capabilities built in, and much of what the fleet management role is then gets outsourced? And so, I would just put it out there as perhaps a potential opportunity. What is a fact in this world that we live in is that more and more of that is happening as time progresses. So when is it going to be the fleet management's time for that to happen? And specifically then the companies can then be technologists, and they can have all of the knowledge that they need to have, and they can offer a much more compelling solution. So that's something that I'll throw out there. But in the meantime, if the fleet management wants to keep up, he's got to come to Geotab and Lytics and everybody else's conferences, ActSoft's conferences, to make sure that they stay up to date. And they have to be technologists to some extent.
Well, one thing came loud and clear out of my discussion with the three of you is that this is a really exciting time to be in fleet management, perhaps the most exciting time. A lot of great new technology coming up that's going to be changing our industry, changing it for the better, and it's going to get to the point where we'll have trouble recognizing the fleet management of the past. So with that, a round of applause for our three panelists for an excellent conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for a great first day of Geotab Connect 2020. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning and would like to remind you that sessions begin and the marketplace opens at 8:30 a.m. Thank you and enjoy your evening.